the war, like what's the external growth?
So both NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member of our alliance, but at the same time, that is a long-term perspective. What is the issue now is to ensure that Ukraine prevail as a sovereign independent nation, and that therefore we need to support Ukraine.
I see that the future of Ukraine is to be part of European Union and also member of NATO. We have taken many steps forward when it comes to military aid to Ukraine, and I'm very glad that we are now cooperating together much more closely to give Ukraine more heavy weapons. I think the discussion now, even though it has taken some time, it's been very important concerning, for example, the Leopards. So countries are cooperating together more closely and more widely, and this is a very good thing. We have to support Ukraine as long as it takes, and they also need more heavy weapons. And the faster and the sooner we can give them more heavy weapons, the sooner the war will end. And this is something that we also need, that cooperation between the democratic countries. Finland has taken many decisions on armed support to Ukraine, and we are willing to continue this as long as it takes.
Welcome to another episode of RBN Live Tuesdays. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. I'll pass it to Nick and then to JB. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends? My family, it's great to be back. Welcome to another great show. We have my brothers CJ, JB, or JB, as always, wrapping up a powerful stream. What were you talking about, JB? JB? Check your audio.
My bad. Sorry. Trying to be responsible. So CJ, you know I'm trying to make you proud, right? But just to respond to this really quick. Yes, Daniel, we are live, just to let you know. But yeah, so one of the things I talked about on my show earlier was there was a story about a woman named Lisa Edwards, who was disabled, discharged by the hospital, even though she was suffering from a medical emergency. And the police picked her up, got her into their custody, and she died in their custody because of all her pleas for help, and that she knew she was having a stroke. They were essentially abusive in their language to her, and she died in their custody. It was a 6.5 minute video of just them berating her and then, not heeding her pleas for help. And so it basically just goes to show how people who are disabled in this country are constantly treated on a day-to-day basis, including by the pigs, the carceral state, the police, the cops, whatever you want to call them, how they, including them, how they treat those of us who are disabled. My second story was about the Ukraine war rally that took place in D.C. this weekend. Past weekend.
Yeah, I covered that too.
Yeah, and so it really was
hundreds of Zelensky fans there.
Yeah, but it was a pro-war rally. It was not anti-war, because if you listen to the language of everybody that was there, they were talking about wanting more weapons being sent to Ukraine, wanting more military support from the United States. So it was a pro-war rally. They were not about trying to foster peace. And I even talked about an article where it was that Boris Johnson and Joe Biden were blocking that peace. It was actually reported by former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, that the peace negotiations were actually blocked by the West. And so really my problem was, I'm like, if you guys truly want peace, you guys should be yelling at Boris Johnson and Joe Biden for them blocking the peace deal in Ukraine instead of actually stoking the flames of war. And now you have thousands of Ukrainians and thousands of Russians that are dead. And Russia's not even serious right now. Russia is really, they're just playing 4D chess, and they're not even getting their ground game on like they could have.
And that rally and JB, that protest, the thing is, they wasn't even calling for peace. They wanted Vladimir Putin to be defeated. So it was
Yeah, it wasn't
an
peace.
out and out pro-war rally. Go ahead, JB.
No. And that's the thing. That's what I was talking about earlier. And then on top of it, somebody have reminded me about how SNAP benefits, emergency assistance SNAP benefits end today. Today's the last day. So then thousands and millions of Americans are going to have their emergency SNAP benefits ended by tomorrow. And so that means that millions of people who use that in order to survive will no longer have those SNAP benefits. And that just goes how much of a failed state we live in this country, that the fact that people are now going to be reduced to starving because they made the wrong decisions in this country, even though it's systemic.
You don't understand, JB. Like, why should we pay for that program to help feed our people when we need to arm Ukrainian Nazis? Like, we need all the money we can get. Well, like, we're all in that war, aren't we?
Yeah,
like that's the mindset of the liberal. As stuff like this, as our society continue to crumble, they send billions of dollars over to Ukraine, and people are confused about why we are upset. Rachel Maddow find it weird that people protesting this blatant vice of the working class. Like, to me, I'm literally shocked that there's not more anger. Like, when I see polls that show that 40% of American people still support the Ukraine war, that's obviously bad for the establishment, because you literally pushing this policy despite the fact that the majority against it. But it's still like 40%, man. And that's why we do our propaganda report. That's why I double down on that, because we examine how the ruling class constantly trick people with that. And now you got this person here. CJ, you put this back up.
Yeah, I want to play it again so we can discuss.
The Prime Minister of Finland, who is another neocon. And she's been one of the biggest cheerleaders for this war, and one of the biggest cheerleaders for getting Finland into NATO, despite promises to the Russian people. Sanna Marin, like, she might as well be John McCain with how much she wants to escalate war with Russia. But go ahead, CJ. I'll pass to you. I know you want to chime in.
Yeah, I want to play this again because essentially the message is Ukraine. The message I'm getting is that Ukraine will be part of NATO. At least that's what they're saying publicly. So I don't know if this is a slip or if this is a overprojection of what's happening. But let's listen.
The war like what's its own throat.
So both NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member of our alliance, but at the same time,
like, do you think he's just saying that because the United States wants people to think that as an excuse for this war, as why they're helping, or do you really? Go ahead.
It's actually really disgusting, because what they're saying Ukraine will become a member of NATO eventually, not right now, eventually. Now, I'm asking you guys, why are they doing that? And this is what led to this conflict. We had Zelensky in Ukraine saying, oh, we want to join NATO. And you have Biden in the EU and top EU officials and NATO officials that was like, I don't know if we're going to have Ukraine join NATO. We may do it here soon. Like, what do you mean you may do it soon? Are they in or not? So what they're doing is they're provoking Russia. They're like, hey, Russia, we about to have Ukraine join NATO. You going to do anything about it, you little bitch? Oh, we about to have Ukraine join NATO. If you're going to have Ukraine join NATO, why not just accept them? They keep doing this thing where they dangle NATO in front of their face. Zelensky plays along with this because Zelensky said, oh, Ukraine's going to be a NATO state soon. Why would you say that? The only reason you would say that is to provoke Russia, because that violates the Minsk Accords and their agreement to have Ukraine as a neutral state. So they're bringing this up, even though the West are not implementing and putting Ukraine in NATO, just to provoke war. That's the only reason. Literally the only reason. Go ahead.
And the guy on the left is the NATO chief. And what country is he from, Nick?
Jens Stoltenberg. Let's see, where is he from?
No, I just thought you knew. I think he's from the
Norwegian.
same.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Norwegian.
Yeah, Norwegian. Yeah. And isn't Norway? Was Norway part of the helping us? Isn't Norway like the top people?
All those Scandinavian countries, all those Norwegian countries are for it. Like all of them have lost their damn mind. And right now, Lula and the global South are the only countries that are talking sense. Lula is leading and spearheading the charge. And I have a segment I'm gonna do later where Lula's foreign policy advisor was on Democracy Now! and he would explain why we must end the conflict in Ukraine. And that's like the number one priority of Brazil, which is the exact opposite of the social democrats, those psychopaths in Sweden and Finland and Norway. These people who implement great like social programs for the people, but they largely benefit from imperialism. Well, a lot of people don't talk. Well, Bernie Sanders and the NATO left, what Nina Turner and them don't discuss enough, is the fact that Sweden is like one of the leading arm dealers in Yemen, for example. So that's what social democrats.
But in the pseudo left,
go ahead.
The pseudo left, the boutique left, they project that these are the countries that we want to model after. Because and Marianne Williamson is also part of this too, because she's fine. Domestically, as long as we're doing good domestically. That's why they don't care about if the person who's running has the top priority is foreign policy. Because in order for us to be doing, for these countries, Sweden and all these countries to be doing great and able to implement these programs and not have all this stuff, is on the backs of the people in the global South. So that's why foreign policy is less important, because being into foreign policy means less personally for us, if you're talking about Norway and even the people in the United States. JB, you wanted to chime in, I think?
Yeah, I just found something that that I was looking at, because it gives a lot of context behind why Putin is feeling the way he did. And the fact is that back in the early 90s, NATO, they promised, in fact, it's out of the our article at RT, it says NATO did promise Moscow it wouldn't expand. Former German defense official tells RT. So the thing is that the fact that they promised Gorbachev that they would not expand NATO, and yet here they are expanding NATO anyway. So basically they lied. And if you look at it, you look it up, you'll find a lot of articles saying, oh, they actually didn't promise. But the thing is like, they're going to deny it, yes. But look, other parties say otherwise. They said, no, you said you weren't going to expand. And so now it's almost like a he said. It's like, wait a minute, who's correct? But then you have third parties, from Germany saying, no, yeah, they said they wouldn't expand NATO. And so all this expansion, and I was actually looking for the picture of how NATO expanded, because somebody shared it recently. But it's like you have it this farther away, and then it's inching closer to you. And of course, Russia also wanted to join NATO, but guess what? They didn't want Russia to join NATO. So guess what? Russia is still on the outside. And so now they're being threatened. And so when you look at what's going on, and Ukraine possibly becoming a NATO state, that means those arms are going to be placed in Ukraine. And then who are they going to be pointed at? They're going to be pointed at Russia. Why? Because really they want Russian resources. This is, look, ultimately, all this is about is money and resources, right? What does Russia have? Russia has liquefied natural gas. They have wheat fields. They have so much land, that they could do things on. So it's a lot of resources within Russia that they have in order to be able to expand their profitability from these corporations. And really, that's what's behind NATO. And so that's what's behind the United States, which is driving NATO like a vehicle, because basically all these NATO nations are really the lackeys of the United States. You kind of think about it like a bully, and he has all his lackeys around him. United States is the big bully, but his lackeys are like France and Germany and Italy, and all these other countries. And he's like, hey man, it's kind of like Biff. Remember Back to the Future? Remember Biff? Yeah, so Biff is the United States, right? And all the other dudes around him are the NATO nations. And that's basically what it is. That makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead, Nick, if you want to introduce this video, sir.
Well, I was just pulling this up while you guys speak, because I want you guys to know that despite this pony show that they do, they usually show CJ, Europe and the world is waking up to it. That's why a lot of people are calling for peace. That's why, despite the pro-war rallies that you see in DC, that has been covered by Reuters and a lot of the corporate media, you have thousands that is marching in France and Germany that is boycotting and protesting NATO. You had a lot of people in Germany that was calling out the United States for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline as well. So this is something that the European leaders, they were leading their people off the cliff, and they were doing nothing but projection. They are saying that Vladimir Putin is making this colossal mistake. He's losing his people. They're Russians that want to protest. Meanwhile, the exact opposite. Boris Johnson forced to resign. Emmanuel lost his majority in France. Emmanuel Macron lost his majority in France. You had Justin Trudeau, who faced protests all the time. You had Democrats who lost their majority in the House. So the people who are losing their political influence and power, and the people who really messed up, despite the narrative that comes from the media, is the West, not Russia. Not it's the exact opposite of what they say. Russia and Putin did exactly what they wanted to do. They drew the line in the sand. So with that said, I want to introduce this is a very short story. I didn't get a chance to do this on Nick and CJ, but it actually works really well based on the topic at hand. And we've been covering a lot of propaganda. And CJ, I know you've been hearing MSNBC, CNN, and a lot of places say stuff like Putin miscalculated because Putin has isolated himself because of this war. He's isolated himself. But this is the reality. You got BRICS that is growing in influence. You have the United States that is more isolated than possibly before. And I'm going to cover here very soon. You have NATO, CJ, and they're doing a good job covering this up. NATO is in shambles because I covered NATO people that was raising concerns over the NATO plan to escalate tensions with China. And they're like, I thought this was a transatlantic alliance. Why the fuck are we in the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, doing all this nonsense, right? So now there's a shift that a lot of NATO members want to start going their own way. I'm gonna cover that here very soon. Russia's clout in the BRICS universe. Now, let's read just a little bit of this to understand, to show you guys how much the West fucked up here. As the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine nears, the U.S. and its allies are confronted with the harsh reality that stringent sanctions have failed to either deter Russian behavior or punish those responsible. One of the main reasons for this failure is the inability by the West to mobilize support for their sanctions policies in the rest of the world. So CJ, JB, what they're saying here is the West put all these sanctions on Russia, and other countries that do business with Russia are like, nah, not feeling it. Africa's like, nah, we're not feeling it. And you had the Russian foreign minister, you had Lavrov, who paid a visit to South Africa, where he was warmly welcomed by his counterpart, Naledi Pandor. Following their meeting, Pandor effusively thanked Lavrov for the most wonderful meeting, and she said will help strengthen the already good relations between her country and Russia as a valued partner. Now, they explained how his reception was remarkable, especially in light of concerted U.S. efforts to contain Russian influence in the African continent by seeking to realign the policy positions of major African countries, such as South Africa, with that of the U.S. on the Ukraine conflict. South Africa considered the continent Go ahead, CJ, if you want to chime in.
No, Nick, you remember that skit in Key and Peele where Obama's saying hello to everybody and all the black people, he gives them dabs and he's like, yeah, we, started at the bottom, now we here, he was like that. That's like BRICS nations versus them facing the West. So it's like the BRICS nations, they're like, hey man, what's up? Let's go. All right, dog, let's go. Okay. We going you backing me up, I'm gonna back you up. All right. But then when we look at the United States, they're like, okay, hi. Good to see you. Okay. All right, yeah, whatever. It's kind of like that. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's just that it reminds me of that Key and Peele skit.
Last part I'll read on this part here. Look, ties between many of these African nations and Russia go back to the time of the Soviet Union, when Moscow was seen as standing up for African people in their struggle to free themselves from the colonial and post-colonial policies and practices of Europe. In the case of South Africa, for instance, Russian ties date back to the period before dismemberment of apartheid rule in 1994, when Russia supported the African National Congress. CJ, JB, and remember CJ when I was telling y'all, Nick and CJ, how it's hilarious how the West think they're gonna propagandize Africa to forget the past.
That's exactly what they're doing. That's what they're trying to do.
Yes. What liberals leave out their analysis of people like W.B. Du Bois, of the Black Panthers, and a lot of Black revolutionary leaders is that a lot of them praise Joseph Stalin. Ooh, you know the boogeyman? A lot of them openly praised him. Nelson Mandela openly praised Joseph Stalin. There was white Europeans who hate Joseph Stalin. Literally, everyone else was cool with the guy. Yeah, socialists in South America loved him, right? But anyway, I digress. But they, in this paragraph in this story, they talk about the longstanding tradition of Russia to help Africans stand up against the imperial rulers. But the West think they're going to come in and convince Africa to take their side in their imperial conquest. Now I got only 2 more headlines to read. It's not a long story. Expert predicts looming economic collapse as BRICS nations unite against the dollar. So CJ, you have people who are not radical. They are starting to see this stuff. I don't know this guy politics reading like when you read his quotes, they sound very neutral. Like I am very open. I am openly hostile to NATO and Western influence. Right? I got bias to my reporting. This guy, he just seemed like he just staying facts. Like, yo, we are fucked here. De-dollarization is.
But we need people. We need people that with that sort of nonchalant, that sort of dry, so people understand. Yeah. These are just facts. This is not. We're not coloring it with language or attitude or personality. We need that type of person, not on like Ryan Grimm level, but like a Chris Hedges. You never hear him really raise his voice or anything like that. He just kind of talks frankly and as a matter of factly. So I like that style in some instances, especially when it concerning detail. We need people like that. Absolutely. Yeah. JB, any final words? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just read this part and then I'll get JB in here because this is the only part I read on this part. He said all it would take would be for Saudi Arabia to stand up on the stage and declare we're now going to consider taking up other currencies for oil. And all of a sudden, bang, all of the countries that had to hold dollars for the last 50 years no longer have an interest in holding them. And if they all start to dump dollars, I think it would happen quickly. You have a tsunami of inflation hitting the shores of the West. Wow. So this is, I'll read the last part. And then this shows why they're really fucked. And I covered this on Nick and Night. You had Saudi Arabia. After that guy said, yo, if Saudi Arabia ever consider dropping our shit, we're fucked. Right after he said that, Saudi Arabia like, yeah, we down to. we open to join BRICS. See, this is happening, guys. So when you see the propaganda and intro video, when you see the propaganda we've been showing you the last week or so, I got another one for you guys today. It's out of desperation and not because they're winning. Last receipt I'll show you guys for this story here. Well, as Saudi Arabia is gaining influence in BRICS, you have a lot of countries looking to join BRICS. As that is happening, you have a splintering of NATO. You have the NATO people that, as we cover, who called out why we escalated in China, why we invested so much in Ukraine, even though in the Ukraine not a NATO country. We have NATO that is influenced by the United States and the war hawks and war criminals. And then there's ordinary Europeans who's like, what the fuck are we doing for our country here? Right? So look at this. The U.S.-led coalition of the willing, foreshadowed the splintering of NATO. Now, CJ, JB, I'm going to ask you guys this question. Why would NATO all of a sudden start saying stuff like, all right, let's have a coalition of the willing? Because people are pushing back on their bullshit, like Turkey. Yes. So now in order to save face, instead of saying that we're divided, we like, oh, we just form a coalition of the willing. No, that shows that you motherfuckers are divided. you motherfuckers are divided. So that's my last part. I'm gonna share this story. I'm gonna get JB and CJ in here, but it showed that despite all the narrative you hear from Western media that Russia is being isolated, that's not true. The United States is even losing their own allies. That's why they got to do coalition the willing now. But JB, CJ, any last thoughts on this story? And I'll pass to you guys Have your final thoughts.
Man, they're losing their posse. That's what it is. Look, NATO is basically United States boys. His boys are walking away. And then next thing you know, you got, Russia, China, you got all the BRICS nations that are, they're pulling up. They're like, what's up? And they're all coming up to all together. And now you got Russia going, Putin's like, hey, what you about to do now? And so, you see, the sweat coming down, France's brow, and Germany's a little fidgety. They're like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know about all this. And then Canada's like, shit, So that's basically what it looks like,
Well,
so you can kind of see it, right?
For me, for my final words sort of on this story, it goes along with several segments Nick and I have done where I'm asking, like, is NATO losing the PR battle? And they're absolutely losing the PR battle because they're also losing the fight. They're also losing the fight. Now, like with John Kirby was being interviewed by that reporter, and he couldn't answer the question about NATO being defensive or offensive, and he was making the point that has Russia's border, has Russia moved closer to NATO, or has NATO moved closer
wait
to Russia?
CJ.
Yeah, he was asking him that question. Go ahead, read from Jay. This is Jay, social media guy for RBN. Go ahead.
Hold up. Jay says, massive anti-NATO protests in Europe. It's a fucking beautiful sight to see. By the way, this is what Wyatt Reed showed, right? This is NATO in 1998 versus NATO in 2022. You tell me, is NATO moving closer to Russia, or is Russia moving closer to NATO? I didn't know that a landmass can actually inch closer to another landmass like that unless it's a tectonic plate. From what it looks like to me, it looks like the red is bleeding a little bit over further east. Now, if that's the case, then that means that you have some more hostile forces coming close to your border. So what in the hell are you going to do when you have hostile people coming closer to your house? Are you going to strap up or not? It looks like Russia has strapped up because hostile forces are coming near their home. And if hostile forces come near your house, then what are you about to do? What would you do if hostile forces came close to your house? And so that's the thing. A lot of people need to look at this from the street view. Street view is if somebody coming up close to you, then guess what you're going to do? You're going to be like, what's up? You're going to flash that gun that's in your waistband. You're like, hey, yo, what's up? What's good? So that's what Russia's doing. Because guess what? They're coming a little too close. NATO's becoming a little too familiar. And that's what it is about. Because NATO promised back in the day in 91, oh no, we're not gonna move any closer to you. Next thing you know, they lied. So guess what? Look. And now Russia's like, all right, well, shit, if you're going to try to run a fade on me, then I guess I'm just going to have to retaliate and show you what's good. And so that's exactly what's happening. And so that's what it looks like to me. And I'm glad Wyatt Ray showed us this. But I had to put it in those terms because people just don't realize what the fuck is going on.
I'm gonna continue with those terms. That's like a mass murderer moving next door to you, and you ain't supposed to have strap up. Mass murderer just moves in. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer just moves in. Hey guys, I'm moving in, just letting you know I'm moving next door, and I'm coming to a house near you. Like, and all he does is just go to house to house, and they're saying, what do you mean? I'm just moving next door, and that's the United States. It's not a believable thing, but with the loss or the slipping of unipolar world. Moving to a multipolar world. I mean, this is only obvious with the enforceable arm of the military industrial complex when you're talking about imperialism on all shores. NATO's the place, so it's intertwined. It's when you're seeing the collapse of an empire, what their army is doing. And what the army is doing it for makes a difference. And our army is literally not doing anything about freedom and help. Is literally just being used to extract resources. So, and they don't have any concern with winning any wars, and that's the sign of a failed or failing nation. And I think I'm going to end it there unless any of you have anything to add. I'll go to announcements.
Yeah, we can do announcements.
All right, so we'll do some announcements. And first, let's start with stories. So we have to start off with the generic graphic, but Aaron got that graphic done. That's for the actual stream. So thank you, Aaron. And just cover the stories on the graphic. We got Khanna. Now, the thing about Khanna, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but he's involved with a couple of stories. So the Chinese lab leak story he's involved with, but Khanna participates in bipartisan unhinged trip to Taiwan. So he appears in that story. And then we have the guy in the middle, the bald head guy. That guy's name is David Urban, and he's the headlining story. CNN commentator was a Norfolk Southern Lobbyist. So the derailment that's happening right now, and he was on a panel. He was actually on a panel talking about the derailment, Dana Bash panel, like a few days ago. And it's unbelievable, the cesspool of sort of media and corporate influence that's going on. But then we just covered sort of the NATO story, and that's the guy over Xi Jinping's left shoulder or right shoulder. That's the NATO guy we just saw in the video. And then we have Xi Jinping there because why all of a sudden the big push about the Chinese lab leak theory narrative? It's a big push behind that. So we'll talk about that. And then I do want to go into the story that you also covered. I didn't know you covered this story, but the food stamps being cut by 42 million. So maybe you can kind of, lead that story, JB. And also your story of Black workers want to quit. So those are the topics. And JB, if you could lead with one of those. So if you want to prepare either one of those stories, we can lead with, and then we'll get to the main story, sure. JB. I'll go ahead and do the announcements as you prepare for that first story. Let's like the stream, everybody. We got 260, 70 or so people watching. Can we get 250 likes? The last time we checked, let me see, what were we? I think we were at 100 maybe, but I'll see right now. No, so we're at 85 likes. So can we get to 250? That's essentially 165 people or something like that. So 165 people hit that like button to get us to the new target of 250. And don't forget, we have Substack for those that need notifications when we go live, when we have clips, when we do summits, and our upcoming op-eds that we're going to be writing on here. And then if you want to check out our website, this is the URL, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. And then if you are brand new and you haven't seen this yet, we now offer memberships, $3.99 a month. So if you're able to join here, or if you rather join through Patreon, you see that scrolling down at the bottom. These are probably the two best ways to contribute financially if you're able to RBN. And there's a couple of one more thing I'm missing. Oh, here it goes. Our email. If you need to email us, info@revblacknetwork.com. We are slow in replying because we all kind of work and have lives and doing this and doing that. Until we get somebody that's handling that, just be patient with our replies. Again, like this video, 250 is the target, and I'm going to pass it to you, JB. If we have any super chats, I'm sorry, we probably should do that too. If we have any super chats.
Sure thing. Not yet, but I did have some. Okay. I did have some chats that were started, but that was about the last segment, though.
What were they though? So, let's look at them and see what they were.
Okay. Casey says the resources for the 21st century lie in Africa. The problem lies in resources for semiconductors and cellular batteries. Am I right or no? I think Casey has a point as far as the semiconductors and cell batteries. I mean, because look at the lithium mines. I think it's in Congo. I think they discovered lithium mines. Was it Congo?
Yeah, Somalia. That's the reason why they're in Somalia, trying to get some resources. Like, it's so transparent. If you're to track resources and you're to track conflicts that NATO or US involved, it's like overlaps like 100% almost.
And people
are crazy.
I want you guys to know regarding that. That's one of the reasons why I'm a staunch anti-capitalist. I'm gonna just show you guys this real quick. I tweeted this out today. And there's been a lot of reporting on this, how modern day slavery in the Congo powers rechargeable battery economy. So as I said many times, capitalism cannot and never existed without slavery. A lot of liberals like Pete Buttigieg and his supporters push battery cars as a future to fight climate change. What they're essentially advocating for is modern day slavery, which is neoliberalism, capitalism as we know it, because it never existed otherwise. But go ahead, CJ. We got 199 here. Appreciate it from Distracted Therapy. I don't see the join button. Someone help him out. Hopefully it's not gone, but someone help him out in the comments if you guys can. But go ahead, CJ, JB.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know it's on our when you go to our page. So, but thank you for that, and we'll pass it to JB to handle the first story before we get to the thumbnail stories here. So go ahead, JB.
All right. So there's a story that came across my view. It was all right. I don't even know how to describe the story. All right, this is some bullshit. Okay, that's the only way I can describe this. Let's go. All right. So this is gonna be kind of crazy. It's about black workers. This is out of CNBC. It says half of black workers want to quit, and here's what companies can do better. That second part, here's what companies can do better, is some bullshit, because really, they just don't get it. They really don't. And here's some of the facts. It says
I'm glad they didn't smear us. Like my standards and my expectations are so low. I'm like, holy shit, they didn't smear the workers immediately in the headlines.
Yeah.
But go ahead, TV.
Says black workers seem to be among the most unhappy employees, with 49% saying they want to quit, according to a recent Indeed survey. The reasons include lack of pay transparency, a misalignment of personal values with company values, and a desire for more diverse leadership. To retain black workers, companies need to do a better job of recruiting diverse leadership for senior positions. This sounds like a PMC problem, but even still, PMCs are still also workers. And so that's why this is important. And this starts off, it says workers are unhappy as layoff fears continue to loom. Work from home flexibility is on the fritz, and there are continued battles for pay transparency. But it seems black workers are among the most unhappy, with 49% of those surveys saying that they want to quit their jobs, according to a recent Indeed report. The reasons why black workers are considering leaving their jobs include pay transparency issues, misalignment of personal values with company values, and wanting a more diverse leadership team. This is nothing new, said the Chief Diversity Officer at Leadership Circle, Aaron Sekou Creighton, says a business leadership development firm says marginalized communities have been unhappy with the workplace for years prior to COVID-19. No shit, Sherlock. The pandemic simply signaled the masses to voice unhappiness at work. And it says one of the things they say they need to do is recruit diverse leadership throughout the entire company. Recruit diverse leadership. That's one of the things they need to do. Nick, CJ.
I call bullshit. I know that's where you're going with the JB. But you see how this is where they directed. You got all these angry black workers. They're like, oh, they must be angry because they're not a diverse workplace. Surely that's why they're upset. And I'm gonna say this right now. This article, man, it really speaks to me. It really speaks to me because, man, I never met a job I didn't love to quit. I didn't quit.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was the MVP. Bro, as soon as I found a job and I thought they was ripping me off, I'm done. I'm done. Like I'm not withholding my labor from the jobs that always rip us off. the black workers. Do you guys know wage theft is more prevalent than criminal burglary? Companies steal way more money than criminals do from you. But you look at how they lead this article. Oh man, they must be upset that they just want a more diverse workplace. I don't give a fuck. I could not give a fuck if they pay me well. That's just me speaking alone. That's me speaking alone. Could not give a fuck along they treat the workers well there. But go ahead, JB.
CJ, you got a comment that you want?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I just was laughing at what he was saying.
Okay. Look, I will be honest with you. Before I move forward, let me just say this. All right. Sometimes I wish I could smack somebody over the back of the head with my wallet. Be like, you feel that? It's because it's empty. That's why. That's all I want to say. You know, some people just make me, oh God, go oops upside the head with my empty wallet. All right. Anyway, it says recruit diverse leadership throughout the entire company. Bullshit. Says, and in recent Indeed and Glassdoor report found that over 60% of workers would turn down an offer or leave a company if they felt their manager or potential manager did not support DEIB or diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. If organizations have a true commitment to inclusion and equity, then they'll begin to make sure that they're hiring top-notch Black, Asian, Latinx, female, and neurodiverse leaders who in their executive ranks. Once that happens now, then there's voice there. Here's my problem. And something that a lot of people don't realize. Classism happens in the Black community too. Hell, it's true because I shared that on Twitter, that bullshit that Deion Sanders just said. But it happens. So is it just about that? Because that's surface level. What about the pay that people are getting? Like, what about the pay disparities that Black people have? What about how, and people will talk about, oh, well, we need more inclusion so that they feel treated better. The problem is y'all, it's the structure. It is the system. It's not just, oh, we just got to change this at this job and change this at that job. No, it needs to be an overhaul. And it's not just about these companies individually. It's about the entire structure being changed, the entire system being changed. And that's something that they don't get. And so that's what it feels like to me, is that they just don't get. Quote says, in some situations where companies are focused on inclusion and equity, we're still not seeing diversity at the senior and executive levels. The problem is that at the senior and executive levels, you have a bunch of people who all they do is look at the numbers. Even if they're Black, they're just looking at the numbers. Do some of them consider, the diversity? Yeah. But most of the time, no. It's about the numbers. It's about how much money and profit you're bringing in. So really, it doesn't matter as much to them. And on top of it, it's about the exploitation of workers that is first and foremost. Workers are feeling more exploited. That's what it is. And people don't take that into consideration. And so workers wanting to quit is because they feel that they're being gypped. And so if you're feeling like you're being gypped, you're not going to want to be there. And Black people are feeling the pinch even more so now. And so guess what? We're leaving because we know that we have more of entitlement to have a more equal and equitable say at work. According, even with our white counterparts. And so this article is like fixed promotion, advancement, and equities. Yeah, but what about the pay of their lowest paid workers? What about allowing workers to actually share how much they get instead of making it a company policy that they can't share how much they get? You know what I'm saying? It's just wild.
I think I mean, the being overrepresented in this poll or having a higher rate of black people who are dissatisfied is just, to me, just because we've been dissatisfied. I wouldn't doubt that we were high even when people had jobs. I think it's always a higher sentiment because of racism and employment. And it, to me, that is that and housing. Those are the two things that's the most prevalent, that is the most hidden, that people don't think is still affect. Those are the two things that's the most prevalent, and it's the easiest to hide. Oh, you just don't have experience. That's all. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Oh, we like another candidate. They just don't mention that they don't like your black ass. You know what I'm saying? So, we've all been there, or a lot of us have been there. It's like, where I remember one time I was working at a place and I had been there 2 years. Wasn't expecting a promotion. There was people there before me. They hired this one guy, white guy. The rest of us weren't white, by the way. Hired this one white guy. Within 4 months, he was managing us. And I was like, what the
That happened
fuck
to
is
me.
going on? Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And it was obvious that he was, to us later, was like, y'all hired him as a manager. Y'all didn't, oh, he was rose up. You wanted him as a manager, but you had to go through this whole, oh, he went through the ranks and the bullshit
Yeah,
to
I've
sell
been through the
us.
same thing. Yep.
Yeah, to kind of
Oh
sell us.
no,
But yeah, go ahead.
no, this happened to me because when I used to work for a dinner show, and one of my friends actually was the kitchen manager, and he hired me on, took me from another company, and he said that he was going to try to make it so that either my pay was equal or better. And I took a little dip in pay just to work with him, and so he ended up leaving. And so I thought, well, I'd be next in line because I'm the only one with culinary arts training in that department. And so I was like, okay, all I got to do is learn the paperwork process, and I'm a manager because I knew everything else. Next thing you know, they pull in another manager from another location. He's manager. And then, no, sorry. They pulled him in later, but then they brought in this guy who he was Latino, but he was white passing, and they made him the manager, and he was there maybe a couple months. I was there a damn near a whole year, and I'm sitting there running the kitchen, and they bring him in and they make him manager, and I'm like, what? What's going on?
Yeah. So there's
So it
layers
happened
of
to me.
it's layer upon top layers of those stories that happen to black people, and I think that's what the extra layer of discontentment. You got a story too, Nick? Sort of something happening like that
What
to
I
you?
put up is to
Go ahead.
reflect what you're talking about, and just talking about the economic inequality in this country. A lot of people are always trying to ignore. The racial wealth inequality right now is worse than it was at the height of the civil rights era. This is why at RBN we tell you guys that class is connected to race. Generational wealth is giant and helping you propel yourself in this system. And in 1960, it was legal to refuse to sell a house to someone because of their race. And now you had that policy in the 60s, and I covered this many times. You had you had landlords, real estate development companies that was found committing fraud against black homeowners because they know they can get away with it, and they did because Eric Holder and the Barack Obama administration was working with them, which is why Barack Obama was chosen by Wall Street, and reason why WikiLeaks exposed that they picked Eric Holder as his attorney general as a Wall Street plant to protect the people who was legally going after black people. So now, after decades of assault by neoliberalism, you have low rates of black home ownership, which put us at a disadvantage in terms of wealth because home ownership is essential in building wealth. This story and the story that JB just showed is one of many reasons why you cannot separate race from class. So that's my addition to the story. I'll pass it back to you, CJ.
Yeah, I think we can end it there, and I do want to insert the I know I said the other one, but the Rokana one I think is a little more. It's a more upbeat story. I think we'll have a little more fun with this story. So let me bring in. This is a case study. I've been. So what I've been doing is just.
Oh, JB,
Go
I
ahead.
think JB will come in.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Well, I
JB.
just
Go
wanna make
ahead.
sure
My bad.
I just wanted to make sure I addressed the super chat really quick. We had a super chat that came in just recently.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Thank you to
Wow.
Takwish. Thank you so much for the generous super chat. Says, I'm a tribal member from Cali and lean far left. Whenever the topic of socialism or communism comes up, family feels like our casinos will be targeted, in which I say our fight is against the imperialists and the powers that wage genocide, slavery, modern day oppression globally. Thank you so much for that super chat. Yeah, the thing is that it is really about the capitalists that that thrive off of exploitation in our country, that drives our government. They own the government, and then they drive this imperialism that's happening. And this imperialism is also part of the colonialism that your people felt and were almost nearly wiped out by. And so, unfortunately, that's the world that we live in right now. And hopefully, not hopefully, it's inevitable. We're going to take this imperialist system and we're going to toss it to the wind. And once we do, then all the people from native and indigenous, they are going to have a more equitable and equal system, because you guys have went through the ringer too, just like we have. And so, thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, so talk is safe for the $100. The only thing, just make sure, as long as you guys not exploiting labor, like that's what we want. Don't exploit your labor. Yeah, and we don't want these families to own critical infrastructure, and don't exploit the labor of your employees. There's no reason why people should fear socialism and Marxism at all. If you fear socialism and Marxism, you guilty of some shit. You are. You like, fucking making
right,
noise.
because there are some,
right.
There
So
are some,
but go ahead, CJ. You're doing some.
No, I was gonna say that they're just understand there's the same propaganda against communism that goes on with us as it goes on in reservations, because they can't have communism spread in reservations either.
Yeah, I'm not attacking them.
Yeah, so that's still what's going on. Another thing, a lot of the casino owners are straight up capitalists and they don't give a fuck about the private people. Some of them are that. So yeah, it's but I do want to talk about this. PMC is mostly an easier way of saying petty bourgeois. See, it's a little bit different. It's not exactly. It's some overlap, but there's not exactly. But this is as it talks about it also. Petty bourgeoisie is a term that was created to be understood by people in Europe 100 years ago. So yes, it's not. It's similar, but I wouldn't say it's exactly necessarily the same. I did want to show both of you this. I guess no. Actually, it'll be a part of the story. I won't show you this first. So let's go to the video. Here it goes of Ro Khanna, and we're gonna move to that story first. Ro Khanna has been out here just being the face, and he clearly wants to be part of leadership. He's clearly trying to get into Senate and be part of the upper echelon of the upper echelon. So let's listen to this story or this clip. Shout out to Case Study QB for providing this clip. And this is Ro Khanna just on a tour against China. A tour against China.
Neil Khanna.
I like that. Oh, shoot. That's real loud. Let me, somebody recorded this real loud. Let me turn it down.
Congressman Ro Khanna of California, who is on the select committee on the strategic competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. Congressman, good to see you. What do you make of this new assertion from the Energy Department that the coronavirus pandemic might have leaked from a Wuhan lab? And what's your best guess as to whether it was a wet market or a lab leak?
Jake, it's a very concerning report. We need transparency. My concern is that China isn't being transparent. I can't speculate on which agency is right, other than to say we have to demand much more transparency from China.
When the lab leak theory was first proposed, there was some very aggressive pushback from health authorities. Why do you think, I mean, it does seem like it's a credible possibility. Who knows what the truth is? But why do you think there was such aggressive pushback?
Jake, it was wrong. As you know, I'm a defender of the First Amendment, of free speech, and I think it was wrong to try to censor the folks who were arguing that it was a accidental leak from a lab. At the very least, we know.
Which is true, because I still remember when, if you would post about the lab leak theory, you get strikes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The people got in trouble. Now the U.S. government is like, oh yeah, it's possible now. And that's been with COVID for a while. That's why I enjoy going on Jimmy's show, because Jimmy, there's a lot more. I gotta be careful because not more freedom, but Jimmy has a YouTube liaison. Like, they communicate about what you can say, what you can't say. Right? If we say some shit on RBN, even if it's true, you get struck, you're fucked. And we don't have any liaison like that. So like whenever I go on Jimmy, I can speak more freely about this, because you can say stuff that is factually true, but it is not YouTube policy. It's not official CDC policy or whatever. So, and this is one of them where people got in trouble for saying a fact. But let's continue the video.
Yeah, and so in answering this question, or addressing this question, why the push of the lab leak narrative? So it's not to say whether it's true or not necessarily the article that we're going to be reading. It's to say that why is it a push right now? Is this part of the fear factor pushing fear mongering of China? And that's the point I was getting to. Go ahead, Nick.
I'll let the video continue and I'll explain my answer to that question, because it's to the theme of, you have the Republicans that playing their part, right? And they got Tucker, you have Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, you have them that they brainwashed their audience to hate China already, right? Now the liberals had to find their way to try to do that as well. And that's with China trying to help Russia. And the right embraced this story when it first happened, right? Now this is the liberals, this is the CNN trying to say, hey, liberals, maybe COVID was China fault. Something they wouldn't do earlier, but now they're like, all right, we got to go full throttle on China. But I expand on that later. I already kind of spoiled it, but let's.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Let's listen, and JB or Nick, let me know if you wanted to stop.
No, it's a plausible theory if the Department of Energy has put this out.
Then the Energy Department says it updated its report after new intelligence came to light. Do you have any idea what kind of intelligence or evidence that could be?
Jake, I don't know, but one of the things I think on the China Select Committee is to look at all of these agency reports, to look at what we can do to demand more transparency out of China.
Is this new evidence, do you think, being shared among intelligence agencies? And in other words, there are 4 agencies who still say, no, it was the wet market, it was not lab leak, but might they change their assessment if they get this new information?
That, I think, is key for the president's leadership, to get these agencies together, to tell them they need to share the relevant intelligence, and that there needs to be a consensus recommendation.
China is calling the U.S. Energy Department's new assessment a political smear. Do you think this could lead to even tenser relations between China and the U.S.?
Well, that's exactly the hope that you're trying to instigate here. On so many different levels, and we're going to get to it with the next video because the next video is Ro Khanna going to Taiwan, which he was part of the delegation that went down there, and he's basically saying, niggas ain't motherfuckers down there in China ain't gonna tell us what to do. We do whatever the fuck we want to do. That's basically how he's talking in that next video. But let's finish out this one. Let me know if you want to stop it.
Tensions are already rising amid the Chinese spy balloon and China talking about maybe arming the Russians.
Well, here's why that's not very credible from China. They are holding in secret all the information. They have refused to cooperate with the World Health Organization. They've refused to give access to their scientists. So if they were more transparent, they'd have a leg to stand on. But given how close they've been, they have no right to accuse the United States of propaganda.
Do you have concerns that the politics around the origins of COVID complicate the ability of scientists to communicate openly? Does this make us more vulnerable in a future pandemic if people
Look
In
at
a
how they
future
trying to make it.
pandemic. Go ahead.
You see the stress because at this point in the story, a critical thinker would be like, okay, but how is this relevant? Why should I be afraid of China? So now this is the part where Jake Tapper is like, I gotta wrap this, I gotta make it come full circle. So
Wrap a bow
now
on it.
I gotta make it so you're afraid of the next pandemic, and China's gonna be responsible for the next pandemic. It's all about stroking fear against China for the liberal viewers here. But go ahead, CJ or JB.
JB, you want to chime in at all before I click this next video, sir? I don't want to
No, keep going.
at all. Absolutely. All right, so now this is the main video for the segment, and that's this one, and it talks about Khanna discusses trip to China, rising tensions with China, and the deal Saudi Arabia sending Ukraine $400 million, and I think that's in arms, so which is basically going to the United States arms dealer. So it's all a circle. But let's listen to Khanna.
Well, the Chinese have not responded to this latest news on Saudi Arabia offering this $40 million in aid. What they have responded to is an American delegation that made its way to Taiwan over the last few days. Republicans and Democrats both. That did not sit well with China. They called it a provocative act. We had two congressmen part of that journey, back from that journey. California Democrat Representative Khanna and Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Obviously, this was a bipartisan effort, and to you.
Let me just pause it here to make a point of what the ruling class has adjusted a long time ago. Because you would go, look at that there. Look at those congressmen. We got a Hispanic or Latino, and we got, is he from Pakistan or Indian? American. Oh, look at them in Congress. A beautiful thing. And both are two fucking corrupt pieces of shit.
Yep.
Both of them. And you see how so they've addressed we want somebody from our community because they'll go to Congress and do the things for our community. And they say, oh, no, we're not gonna do that. We're just gonna get somebody who looks like the people in your community, and he's gonna espouse the same thing as the white people preceded him. That's essentially what we have.
And it's obvious that they are doing this to strengthen capitalism and to provide a shield for themselves. Meanwhile, the right-wing analysis of this is they will look at this and like, oh my God, the Democrats are so woke. Look at how they embrace people of color. That's how they view it. Even though to us it's obvious that they do it in order to embolden these systems by putting a pretty face, a representative face on it. But let's continue.
You, Congressman Gonzalez, first. Why make the trip, knowing that the reaction would be just as you discovered from China, that it was provocative, almost as bad as when Nancy Pelosi went, they said?
Yeah, no, here in the House, we don't pay attention what the communist China propaganda puts out. It's important that the House lead, though.
Oh, these people, man.
Come on.
And too often we point to the White House for not doing X, Y, or Z. You know, the House of Representatives is an equal branch of government, and this is an area that is a bipartisan effort to go all across the globe and stand with our allies. You know, when I was, you talk about provocative. When I was in the Navy, we used to fly on a P-3 surveillance flights against China, and China would come out and they would harass our airplanes. The exact same thing is happening now. The only thing is they're harassing our P-8s. So this is dangerous. China.
So he's part of the Navy intelligence or something similar to that. So Democrats and GOP have CIA elected people in who they would refer to as people, and they just simply call people who are CIA Democrats, for example, people who used to be high-ranking or in positions of power in different military branches. And this to me, this sort of marrying, have people go through the military. How is that person going? How do you think that person is going to view the military? Like, what do you think? Are they going to be like, hey, let's cut military funding? And it speaks to the point, Nick, that you make all the time. who do we have to vote for if we don't want to have war? Like they're literally eliminating those options with people and elected candidates like this guy right here.
Mm-hmm. This guy sounds just like DeSantis.
Doesn't he though?
Is being irresponsible in the way they're reacting, and it's important that we have bipartisan direction when we go out and talk about it in the world.
Switching to you, Congressman Khanna, as you know, we're committing now 200 troops to Taiwan. I think from around 30 now, and that is something else that's not been greeted favorably, not surprisingly, by Taiwan. Do you support that? Because some look at that as a preview to coming attraction that will send still more troops and more and more. What do you say?
Our commitment to train Taiwan in its own self-defense is appropriate. And I think there's nothing provocative about American politicians going to Taiwan, given our economic ties with semiconductors, given that Taiwan is a democracy, given that President Carter, who signed the Taiwan Relation Act and recognized China, was in Taiwan in 1999. So there's no reason for China to think that American politicians, continuing in a tradition that President Carter actually started, going to Taiwan is any problem.
So let me ask you both this, Congressman Gonzalez, if China were to invade Taiwan, is that an act of war? We should commit ourselves?
Jesus
I think the president should have.
Let's see what Ro says. Let's see Ro Khanna's answer, because that's gonna be very telling. That's gonna be very telling.
President Biden has made it very clear that we are going to stand with Taiwan, that we are going to remain there by our allies. But we got to get to a point. I spent 20 years in the military. I spent 5 years.
Taiwan is not a NATO country. It's
I want to
China.
prevent wars.
They are presented as Taiwan as a close ally to the United States. China and Taiwan has very industrial and very strong trade relations with each other, which is why Taiwanese people do not want to separate from China. Most of them want the status quo because they benefit from it. There's a lot of trade and good and family that goes back and forth between China and Taiwan, just like between Ukraine and Russia. They completely whitewashing that and pretending that Taiwan is like Hawaii, like it's like right there, right next to us, our friend. It's like opposite than what they were saying. And many people, they can't even point out Taiwan on the map. When you ask liberals, like, where fuck Taiwan at, they point in the Western Hemisphere. They don't know that Taiwan is literally right there. How many Americans don't know that Taiwan is right there? You know that Taiwan is 3 times closer to China than Hawaii is to the United States? But people pretend that Taiwan is this foreign land to China. China only lost Taiwan because of Japanese imperialism. Don't get me started. Let's continue. I need to invite Maury Kimberly on again because she's really good at debunking this bullshit. But let's continue.
I don't want to see America get dragged into another war, whether that's in Taiwan
I certainly understand that. But if China invaded Taiwan,
you see that? The weapon manufacturers represent. Hey, I understand that, okay? But you get the question. Are you going to go to war or not, sir? You see that? The media checking the freaking representatives.
And the thing is, the guy doesn't even sound good. Like, he's not even a peace advocate
at
all. He's not weak on China. And this is what makes our media so insane. Like, you have Anthony Blinken, you have Mike Pompeo getting interviews to the media, sounding crazy, and the media is like, why aren't you sounding crazier? Why don't you want to buy more people? And then the people during the interview, look at his face. In their interview, they be like, "What the fuck? I swear I said anything right. I swear I said anything right. What the hell are you talking about?" It's crazy. Let's continue.
All right. It's been 5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. I want to prevent wars. I don't want to see America get dragged into another war, whether that's in Taiwan
I certainly understand that. But if China invaded Taiwan, despite that, is that an act of war to which we should commit troops?
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I would argue that China is doing that exact thing right.
Man. Do you think he, and I'll start with you, JB, do you think him interrupting and interjecting that, do you think he altered this guy's answer? Now he's like, absolutely. Like, do you think him like, hey, man, you hear what I'm saying? Do you think that altered his question to be more resolved in his answer, JB, and then Nick?
Well, I mean, they're they're workmates for the same people. It's just two workmates talking. That's all it really is. Fox News brought to you by Boeing. It's the same, they're workmates, right? This guy gets paid by the same guys that this guy on Fox News gets paid by. So really, what is the difference between them, right? Look, that's like me and Willie, in the kitchen talking to one another about something. People think that we're from two different companies when we're working on the same line in the back of the kitchen. Like, what? Me and Willie, we workmates. They're both workmates, man. So that's the thing people don't realize. And then this whole thing about wanting to go after China, Taiwan is a part of China. They don't get it. And the crazy part is like, wait a minute. Saying that China is going to invade Taiwan is like saying the United States is going to invade Texas. What? How can you invade Texas? It's a part of the United States. CJ.
Just calm down, JB. Calm
CJ,
down.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. These people, like,
but they're intentionally being wrong in order to mislead the audience.
Yeah.
And I'll play it and let Nick answer when he gets back.
Right now, in the cyberspace, that's where these wars start. They start in cyber, and then they go on from there. So it's absolutely important that we have a bipartisan delegations continue to make this trek and show that America is going to stand by its allies.
All right. Does that mean then to you as well, Congressman Khanna, that China invading Taiwan to take it back, as it says it's theirs anyway, that
They said it's there.
To protect
They said it's there instead of NATO. NATO, you guys know that NATO officially recognizes Taiwan as China. Taiwan is not NATO. There is no alliance on paper that connects Taiwan and the United States. They were just making it up. Then they said China says it's part of Taiwan. It's China's part of Taiwan. It's insane. Let's continue. Go ahead, CJ.
Man, I mean, let's just look at the map here and what makes sense here. And Taiwan was taken by Japan. Look how far Japan is to Taiwan. And then they just took it and they took it back. So that's the reason why they even have these separatists on the soil of Taiwan. Is because of that. Like this is so.
It's aggressive propaganda, man. It's so
that's what I was just about to say. This is so like in your face, like trying so hard to trigger you so hard. And for a so-called progressive like Ro Khanna to be participating in such ramped up propaganda in order to rile people up about China, it just speaks to the whole progressive Democrat apparatus and how it's just rotted to the core.
CJ, do you see this? I'm going to read this comment real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
This from Wary Pilgrim, friend of the show. I think a recent poll had Adam Schiff 22%. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, he's terrible too.
20%. Yeah. So we lose here. Barbara Lee at 6%. Ro Neil Khanna at 4%. Hurting. Like there's no winning here. Barbara Lee unfortunately turned her back on the anti-war movement. She had a great vote on Afghanistan, but she's all in for the Ukraine war, and she turned her back on the movement. So California politics is as bad as it gets. Like there's no winning here.
Yeah, there's no.
Good. Thank you for the comment, Warrior. I didn't see that post, so
you see that? Like you think, oh, California, New York, y'all have some of the best Democrats, right? Most furthest left. Really? You talking about AOC and Hakeem in New York?
CJ,
you talking about Ro Khanna and these freaking milquetoast over here in California?
CJ, who are they replacing? Think about who they're replacing. They're replacing Dianne Feinstein, who was senator for decades.
Jesus, she was terrible, man.
There's no such thing.
That lets you know that blue can't get any better. I mean, how further left can you get than California, who walk away from Medicare for all? Literally, it was right there at the doorsteps, and they walked away from it. That's the Democratic Party, but We can continue. Unless go ahead, JB, if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah,
We'll
I was just
the video.
looking at it about how close Taiwan. Taiwan is 100 miles from mainland China, right? Taiwan is closer to China than Puerto Rico is to the United States.
Yep.
And
go ahead,
the same distance from China to Taiwan is the same distance from the United States to Cuba. That's how close Taiwan is to China. And so to sit here and talk about how Taiwan and China aren't that close or not or they're two different countries when the United States even recognizes Taiwan as China. Taiwan is basically, you could say, a state of China. I mean, is it safe to say that? So
what are officials saying? What are officials saying, JB, if you know? What are they saying about like the one China policy? Or Nick, if you wanted to chime in, what are they saying about the one China policy? Are they saying
they pretend it doesn't exist? They just pretend it doesn't exist because if you look at the United States strategy, the United States official strategy is meant to be purposely vague on this issue, where they talk about Taiwan as a close ally that China is encroaching on. But don't bring up the fact that we still acknowledge Taiwan as part of China, and we can't revoke that. They understand they can't revoke that because that'd be way too exploratory. So they walk the fine line, where it's almost like don't talk about it. The media don't talk about it, or the people who have anti-China rhetoric. And I watch a lot of these segments, guys, doing propaganda report. They purposely leave it out, and that's a coordinated U.S. strategy they've been doing for the last decade or so. JB, if you want to chime in.
Yeah. So this it says here this is from eu.chinamission.gov.china. Says the One China principle has a clear and unambiguous meaning. There is but one China in the world. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China, and the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the whole of China. The de facto basis for the One China principle is unshakable. Taiwan has belonged to China since ancient times. The easiest references to this effect dates back to the year 230. From the 12th century onwards, the imperial central governments of China all set up administrative bodies to exercise jurisdiction over Pinghu and Taiwan. In 1885, the Qing court upgraded Taiwan's status and made Taiwan a full province. A province to us is just like a state in the United States. When it then became the 20th province of China, or 20th state of China, in 1895, the Qing government defeated the First Sino-Japanese War. It was forced to cede Taiwan and the Pinghu Islands to Japan. After the Chinese people's victory in the war against Japanese aggression, China recovered Taiwan and the Pinghu Islands, resuming the exercise of sovereignty over Taiwan in October of 1945. The fact that Taiwan was returned to China is a part of the post-World War II world order. Since 1949, although the mainland and Taiwan are yet to be reunified, Taiwan's status as part of China's territory has never changed. So China and Taiwan are one.
Thank you, JB, for that information. And I'm going to just hear one more quote to give everybody for Ro Khanna, and we'll close this segment in maybe 2 minutes. So let's listen for one more quote about what he says about China here.
Taiwan, defending Taiwan, having U.S. soldiers in Taiwan.
Well, first of all, let me just echo what Representative Gonzalez said. We can and will avoid war in China. That was clear to me meeting the president there and the leadership there. If we help Taiwan build up its defense and deterrence, and at the same time,
you disgusting motherfucker.
There's no reason.
You guys listen to what he just said there. He said, we're going to avoid the war with China, right? That's the head fake. He said, while we do this, we are going to build up Taiwanese defense. What does that mean? That means arm Taiwanese separatists. So what Ro Khanna is saying is, we're going to avoid war with China as long as China behave. As long as China doesn't do anything stupid. right? Imagine someone went to your house and they start fucking your house up, stealing your stuff, and then like, oh yeah, we're not gonna have a fight here as long as you don't do anything stupid. As they stealing the stuff in your house, burning your crops. That's what they want from China here, and that's what they asked for Russia. The United States say, let us impose our geopolitical dominance and destroy your hegemony, and you better not do anything. If you do anything in response of us violating your sovereignty, there will be war, and it will be your fault. That's what Khanna is saying here.
Nick, let me ask you this, man. Isn't this basically just a roundabout way of what Japan did to China by taking Taiwan? Like, if that's what it feels like. It feels like the United States is trying to do what Japan did, but just in a more roundabout, sneakish way.
They try to make Taiwan the new Ukraine. They've been that strategy to try to make this as a war that they can drag out as a way to straight up escalate to war with China. This is the NATO 2030 strategy that I have spoken about, and this is what led to the splintering of NATO. We have NATO people say, why are we even doing this? Like, how did this ensure our national defense? Like, aren't we a defensive organization? So that's like kind of their mindset here.
There needs to be war, and that should be the goal. If war there would be catastrophic for the world and the American economy.
It really sounds like China is preparing for something here. They're not just ranting out of,
they're preparing for something here.
So I'm just wondering whether you would support that if it came to that.
I would support what our policy has been with the Taiwan Relation Act, which says that we will support
this
Taiwan.
News anchor is like, so he asked it twice. He said, if China invade Taiwan, will you guys support war? And then they answer is essentially yes. And then he comes back like, no, you didn't say it strong enough, motherfucker. Then you want to bomb China. So their answer were already hawkish. Wasn't enough for him, though. Let's continue.
Defense, it's purposely ambiguous, and it would be the call of the commander-in-chief at the time. I think that policy has served us well from a national security perspective since the days of Nixon and Kissinger, and I affirm that policy.
You know, gentlemen, we got news today that Saudi Arabia is providing $400 million of aid to Ukraine, and a lot of people are wondering the timing of this. Now, Saudi Arabia has had, as you know, Congressman Gonzalez, been cozying up or at least appearing closer to Russia, but that this decision might have turned on the fact that Iran is providing drones and other weapons to the Russians, and that was the last straw. Do you agree with that, Congressman Gonzalez, that had it not been for Iran's involvement in Ukraine to help Russia, Saudi Arabia would never have offered this aid to Ukraine?
I feel like that's a whole separate topic, and I don't want to go into it because I feel like I want to use a whole separate segment. I said topic, a whole separate segment, but we can end it there on the China segment and Khanna.
I have another. I don't know if you have another segment you about introduce. I have
just the main one with the CNN reporter. But I mean, we can always push it back. Yeah, we can always. Let me see here. Actually, no. Let me just bring up the article real quick and because actually I'm gonna have to jam out and get my daughter. So let me just show you the headline. I'm not going to show you the video. I'll just show you the headline.
For Nick at night because I don't want to rush the story. Actually, yeah, I might do this next story. So this could be our last story because I got my brothers here too. So
okay, yeah,
this could be our last story. That's
CNN has Norfolk Lobbyists on panel. So this is the story, and I saw it on Rising initially, but CNN has Norfolk, and you're talking about Norfolk Southern. You're talking about the rail company that just had the derailment in Ohio. There's a lobbyist. He was a former lobbyist of that company. He's actually been a lobbyist for a lot of terrible things, and his name is David Urban. I'm sure if you watch any corporate media, even if it's for ops, like just to check it out, like you, Nick, I'm sure you've seen his face on CNN on different panels. He's been in arguments with people like Nina Turner.
Yeah, David Urban, one of the worst.
Yeah, this guy, David Urban. So this is the headline for Media Matters, and I know Media Matters is not the greatest. So CNN commentator lobby for Norfolk Southern. The network didn't tell its audience during East Palestine discussion. And he was on CNN for a panel with Dana Bash, a Dana Bash panel about Eastern Palestine and the derailment, and didn't tell anybody this guy was actually a lobbyist and lobbied to help get some of those safety regulations eliminated on the panel. What do you think he's going to say? So why does CNN continue to employ ethically challenged lobbyist David Urban? Of course you know why. But let's read a little bit into the article. CNN State of the Union and host Dana Bash held a Sunday roundtable discussion about the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment, featuring CNN political commentator David Urban, who said that, quote, this is part of the discussion on East Palestine, there's plenty of blame to go around on this, end quote, and pivoted to criticizing the Biden administration. CNN never disclosed or asked Urban about his work for Norfolk Southern, which paid him and his then lobbying firm over $1 million. Urban was, until 2020, the president of the lobbying firm American Continental Group, where he lobbied for Norfolk Southern on, quote, transportation issues related to railways starting in 2009, according to federal disclosure forms. He and his firm collected at least $1,140,000, according to calculations of federal data by ProPublica. And this is the last paragraph here. The Republican commentary, now the managing director for BGR Group, a leading lobbying firm that presents countless conflicts of interest for his on-air work. In its most recent lobbying quarter, BGR has continued to lobby on transportation issues. Its website also states, quote, our clients in aviation, automotive, rail, shipping, and mass transit industries rely on BGR to educate political leaders about how vital these industries are to domestic and international commerce. And that's who CNN chooses to put on their show. But it speaks to not just this, because if you know at all about CNN and other networks, they do this all the time. And for example, Disney and ABC on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, they have what's his name from New Jersey, the governor, Chris Christie. After his, remember his the whole ferry thing when they the opponent, they did something and that whole thing that happened, then they went and hired him literally like months after that. And it was like, what the fuck? This guy just had a scandal. But those things, these scandals that hurt the American population or the working class doesn't have anything. It doesn't hurt the capital class. So since we didn't in the capital class, they're like, yeah, whatever. And I'm just showing you another headline. I'm not going to read this one, but CNN didn't disclose Trumpy pundits lobbying for Norfolk Southern Rail. And it's just another headline from another article. Go ahead if you want to.
This is why I'm a big advocate of citizen journalism. This is why I implore the proletariat to take journalism back. Whether Americans know it or not, journalism has been completely hijacked by the capitalist class, and they get these journalism degrees because they get these elite offers to join institutions like Harvard because they're family connections and their social club, right? So they literally create a class barrier that make it only so the rich can be part of this journalistic club, be part of New York Times, CNN, and then they invite only other capitalists on. You notice they're not bringing workers on. Like when Rachel Maddow covered the anti-war rally, she didn't go down there and talk to ordinary workers. But when they talk about capitalist class issues, They'll bring a capitalist on and talk about it. So I implore the proletariat. We need to take media and journalism back, and that is exactly what I did. Which is why I decolonized my mind, and I would not allow people to dissuade me from my path. When people say, "Oh, what are your credentials, Nick? Why do you think you can start a network, Nick? Why do you think you can be on the hill talking about Venezuela? What are your credentials?" My credentials is because I was a worker, because I'm a black man living in America. That's my credentials. Your credential, if you're a disabled person living in America, that's your credentials. If you're a worker, if you got a kid and you're struggling for your kid, that's your credentials. That made you a valuable voice in politics. And it's insane that it's been the exact opposite for years, where those voices was not valued. You got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, you got to come from someone's family to have a valuable political perspective. Which is why I advocate for citizen journalism, and I tell as many people to do this as possible on their subjects of interest. But that's my rant on this. I'll pass to you guys.
Yeah, so let's just cover maybe the first 3 or 4 minutes of this video, because they give just more information about the story. And let's listen. This is where I found out about this story first.
For the rail company.
Oh, sorry.
Well, it's come to light that CNN commentator David Urban lobbied for transportation company Norfolk Southern, the rail operator at the center of the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, that released toxic chemicals into the air. This is according to Media Matters. Until 2020, Urban was the president of lobbying firm American Continental Group, where he lobbied for Norfolk Southern on transportation issues related to railways, starting in 2009, according to federal disclosure forms. He and his firm collected at least $1.1 million, according to a calculation of federal data by ProPublica.
CNN political correspondent Dana Bash held a roundtable discussion on Sunday about the East Palestine trail derailment featuring Urban. And according to Media Matters, CNN never disclosed or asked Urban about his work for the rail company. Now, we've reached out to CNN about this matter and have not heard back at the time of this taping.
They're not going to hit you back.
Wow. I know exactly who this is. I see him on CNN frequently. He's on a lot.
Oh, yeah. And we should get into some of the other things that he has a conflict of interest about that he talks about on the show. But keep this in mind. During the segment, Dana Bash mentioned the fact that the Trump administration had rolled back some of these regulations. To which Urban replied, quote, "There's plenty of blame to go around on this. These kinds of things happen. But what's important is we do the right thing moving forward to take care of people in these towns and communities."
So this is a very important opportunity for people to understand how propaganda works behind the scenes, and how you just think these are random people picked. They're not random at all whatsoever. These are carefully placed corporate people put on TV in order to present a story. Capitalists are not going to leave it up to some willy-nilly people with their own ideas to be on TV of influence. They're not going to do that. They're going to carefully install people, from the reporter to the people they bring on the show, to say to make sure they stay in line. Now, how do you think he colors all of his comments? A guy who could be corporately bought by anybody and just say, "Hey, do this work for me." Like, how do you think that colors his opinion about the election when they have him on there talking about the election as a commentary, when they have him on there talking about strikes, when they have him on there talking about BLM? Look at the influence he has. That's where his opinions are coming from. Now, multiply that by everybody you're seeing on your cable news coverage. That's the perspective you're getting, and that's why we're so essential. Go ahead, JB or Nick.
I mean, basically, he's a corporate spend doctor. That's basically all it is, and he's there to spend for the railroad companies, so that he continuously make corporations look good, even though in reality they have been terrible for the citizens of this nation. That's basically all it is. And so there's this combination, there's this team, this team up between corporations and the media, which basically are just employees of the media. And so of course they're going to put somebody like him in their ranks to have commentary about what's going on so that they can shape the minds of people so that they don't end up revolting against the corporations, which have their, they essentially, pardon me for saying this, but they have their hand up the government's ass and moving its mouth like a puppet. That's basically all it is. And so as they continuously, puppet this government, and they try to make it look like they are the good guys because, oh, we just made a mistake as a corporation. No, they didn't. They don't care. And so they put these people in there to really anesthetize all the people who are watching so that we don't actually rise up against these corporations that are really the ones that are damaging us. When in reality, what we need to do is we need to rise up against them because they're the ones who are literally killing us in a very slow or fast pace, depending on what damage they do. So just like what they did in East Palestine, you don't think that's not going to happen again in other places? And then, it has happened in other places. And then as it continuously happens, they're going to continue to keep killing you. So the question is, are you going to allow them to keep doing that and keep making you feel like, oh, well, they're just making mistakes? They're not making mistakes. If I step on your foot one time, that's a mistake. If I step on twice, it's intentional. If I step on it 3 times, then you're going to knock my ass out.
Absolutely, JB. And let me, because there is a part that I do want to make sure is included. So let me play, I think it's coming up, but not quite sure. So let me play a little bit more of what Bree and Robbie says here.
And then he went on to criticize the Biden administration for their handling of the crisis. Now, I have no problem at all criticizing the Biden administration for the crisis, but running cover for the direct role that the Trump administration played in setting the stage for this crisis is not what you would expect a neutral commentator to do. It's what you would expect a lobbyist to do.
Right. And regardless, I don't care how neutral he may or may not be, you have to disclose someone who was working in a very high up position in lobbying. I mean, the revolving door between government and lobbying and media is disgusting in and of itself. But that's gotta be disclosed. I guess I'm not saying don't put them on the panel.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna fast forward because they talk about some of the other things this guy is involved in. So right here, I believe she goes over it.
Also has urged, this is all from Media Matters, this commentator has urged a military strike against Iran without any disclosure that he worked for defense contractors. He's praised then Defense Secretary Mark Esper without the network disclosing that he personally lobbied the Defense Department on behalf of defense contractors. He repeatedly attacked environmental protections without disclosing that he lobbied for fossil fuel related clients, including Norfolk Southern, which of course transports coal and other toxic chemicals. He repeatedly pushed for the passage of a trade agreement on air after he was hired to lobby for it. The network didn't disclose that conflict of interest. And he touted a lobbying client's opposition to a tax bill without any disclosure that he was being paid to do so.
You really want?
To me, that's truly amazing. And I just wanted to make sure to include that last part. And it's so important for us as Marxists or just humans, if you're not a Marxist, to point out these layers of corruption that I'm just telling you, there's people that don't even think that, because people assume when you watch news, the news, why are you corrupting news? People, like the average person who's not in, like when I first started watching news, like it would never even cross my mind. I thought this is the last bastion of truth. At least the news is telling us the right thing, and come to find out that's the most lying ass shit there is. You know what I'm saying? Then to come to find out, but they're just saying, like, there's so many people that are 17, 18, 19, they can't even fathom, just like you can't fathom, why is the CIA terrible? What, like, you can't fathom because you're so taught that these are just great institutions that are for justice and great things. And that's my last word on it. Any final thoughts on this before we close out and close the stream, guys?
We can wrap there because I know we probably can wrap early today.
I think
any announcement, JB. I may have Nick Night tomorrow. We see. I have the big event this weekend, so I play by ear. I still have a few stories. I have a few stories I want to discuss, but I want to make sure I'm well prepared for that. JB, any announcements? Anything? I'll see you guys around.
Yeah. So take care, Nick. What I have this Thursday, Sabby and I are going to be on the Sabby and JB show. We're going to actually be talking about the story, the fictional story of Snowpiercer and why it relates to capitalism. So we're going to be having a great conversation about that. We're going to get deep into that discussion. So I am excited to talk about that with Sabby. And then, of course, I'm be getting into my reading of Assata Shakur's autobiography on my channel. So if you guys would like to, you guys can go to my channel for that. There is a couple of super chats if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, and we can pull up the Rockfin. I have Rockfin pulled up right now. So
oh, okay, cool. Puts the mouse says, "Thanks, A Team. RBN is my daily dose of realness. Thank you so very much." And Jay says there is a U.S.-backed coup going on in Myanmar right now. Goal is to disrupt China's Belt and Road Initiative, and Taiwan plays into that. Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Myanmar, all U.S. clients designed to blockade China. Thank you so very much. Got to look into that and what's going on in Myanmar. Thank you so much for that, Jay. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I don't see not one comment unless I'm looking at it wrong on Rockfin. I don't see not one.
No, I didn't see it. But just to thank Synaptic 111 for becoming a YouTube member. Yes, we have memberships now. So thank you so very much for Synaptic for becoming a member as well. Just wanted to make sure I got that in too. So yeah, I didn't see anything on Rockfin either myself. So I think we're both in the clear for Rockfin.
Okay. And then last but not least, make sure you like this stream on your way out. We say it all the time because it is very important. The more likes the streams get, the more likelihood that people will see this in their feed. Because although we have people on our Substack, it is not the vast majority. You know, we have 31,000 people. We don't have 31,000 people on our Substack. So there's a lot of people missing notifications, and you liking the videos actually help that. So we got up to like 380 people at a point. So if you're brand new, please like the stream on the way out. And like JB said, we have memberships now, $3.99. You can check out the different perks you get there. Maybe we'll add some different levels later, but for right now, we just started out with that one. 31,450 people is the subscriber count. Before we started was the count I had. And then this is our Substack. Make sure you join the Substack. And of course, like the video on your way out. And then we're going to go ahead. Go ahead.
Just one thing. Also, if you guys have not, please make sure to donate to our fundraiser as well to pay for our graphics designer. You can go to Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout as well as Cash App $ Mutual Aid Forever. And remember, we do it for the kittens. So thank you so very much for that too.
Thanks, JB. Almost forgot that. I need to add that too on this side so I can see that too. So thank you, everybody. And we're going to end with this Muhammad Ali video. So enjoy.
It has been said that I have two alternatives, either go to jail or go to the army. But I would like to say that there is another alternative, and that alternative is justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Muhammad Ali has just refused to be inducted into the United States Armed Forces.
He refused induction on the grounds of his religious convictions on war.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some poor hungry people in the mud for big powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger.
You know, Muhammad Ali is really important in this because when Ali refuses induction, there's a famous column in the New York Times written by Tom Wicker where he just wonders out loud what would happen if you had 100,000 Muhammad Alis. You had 100,000 people who were prepared to do what Muhammad Ali just did. You would bring this war to a stop. So the draft resistors set that kind of as the goal.
It took an all-white jury less than a half hour to find Muhammad Ali guilty of all charges and specifications. He was sentenced to the maximum, 5 years in prison, and was fined $10,000.
I find nothing amusing or interesting or tolerable about this man. He's a disgrace to his country, his race, and what he laughingly describes as his profession. He has been found guilty. He is out on bail. He will inevitably go to prison, as well he should. He's a simplistic fool and a pawn.
Do you share the same concern that Mohammed has for his draft status?
Oh, I certainly do. My views on the draft are very clear. I'm against it. And I think the sooner our country does away with the draft, the better it will be for everybody.